16 miles southeast of Tombstone, Arizona, lies the ghost town of Gleason. The town was originally called Turquoise, and it was established in the 1870s in what was then the Arizona Territory, later re-established as Gleason in 1900. A town that was once home to around 1,000 people, today sits abandoned, lonely, and desolate. Today we're going to take a tour through Gleason to see what's left of this historic mining town and learn a little bit about the town's history, some of which is highly unpleasant. That's coming up right now on Desert Sky Adventures. Our tour of Gleason begins at what was the epicenter of the town, the historic Gleason Jail, which according to the sign out front was built in 1910, replaced the tiny wooden jail which once stood nearby. Constructed entirely of reinforced concrete, it has withstood 100 years of weather, escape attempts, vandals, neglect, and pillagers, official and otherwise. It stands at the center of the town of Gleason, whose population at one time exceeded 1,000 residents, stretching north for over a mile and east-west along Gleason Road. Primarily a mining town, Gleason's fortunes largely rose and fell with the price of copper. When the mines shut down in 1958, most of Gleason disappeared. Renovation of the jail began in 2008, and the building serves as a center for research and community gatherings. The murderer and escaped convict Luther Price was held here while being transported back to prison in 1917. The jail fell into disuse by the mid-1930s and was converted into a private home for a time. In 2008, the jail property was purchased and it was repaired and renovated into the structure you see today. Completed in April of 1910, the jail was built at a cost of $1,778. Jail records indicate you could find between 2 and 8 inmates confined here on any given day, most for petty theft, public drunkenness, or assault. The jail was often used for temporary confinement of prisoners who were being transported to Tombstone from the further reaches of Cochise County. One cell was also used as a secure lockup for confiscated bootleg liquor during both the Arizona Prohibition period between 1915 and 1920 and the National Prohibition between 1920 and 1933. Here we get a good look at some of Gleason's former residents. Out in front of the jail, we met up with Renee, whose family has lived in this area for decades, and she's going to be our tour guide through the former streets of Gleason.
I don't know if you heard my dad talking. This was his parents' store. This is his dad's store. His name is still at the top up there. So this just used to be kind of a general store. They had a pool table in there. It was a saloon. It was a bar. But they also had like a display case of different items in there. So you could come in here as like a general store, a bar, a gathering area. There used to be a gas pump here. Not the first pole at the end, but the second one in. There used to be a gas pump right there. So that was a gas station as well.
Wow.
And then the business was obviously in the front part, and then the back part of the building was their house.
Oh, okay.
So he lived in this house from the time he was a baby. He was born in Douglas, because his mom knew she was going to deliver, so she went to Douglas to deliver, and then she came back 3 days later. So he's been here since he was a baby, and then he lived here until he was about 5 years old. See, the monsoons did a lot of damage on those walls right there.
Yeah.
But where the wall stands back there, that's where the house part of the building used to be.
And when was this built?
I don't know when it was built, but it was a running store in the 30s, 40s. My dad was born in 48, so they were in here at least in the 40s. Yep.
Cool. To the north of the Bono Store was the B.A. Taylor warehouse, which was the starting location of the 1912 fire that burned most of Gleason. This is the only photo I could find of it. But here, we'll see what's left of this warehouse.
And this is the basement. Still see how deep it goes. There's snow down in there still.
Yeah.
But in the summertime, a lot of snakes like to go down there. There's just a lot of random stuff. People just up and left, didn't take their stuff, so a lot of trailers, a lot of shells just still stand out here.
I had a bad feeling the first time I laid eyes on this trailer, and I would soon find out why.
Belonged to a man named Richard. He was really tall, really big built. They called him Bigfoot. This was his trailer. He is, you can look him up, he is a convicted murderer. Oh wow. There's a neighboring town, Elfrida, about 10 miles east of here. Him and his friend kidnapped two girls in 1995, I think. Brought them out here and killed them. And they threw their bodies up in the mines somewhere up in there. His friend felt guilty about it afterwards, confessed to his dad. His dad marched him to the police station. He showed him where to find the bodies. So this is Bigfoot's trailer. He was sentenced to death. They lethally injected him. He died in the prison system.
What happened here on 4th of July weekend 1991 was repugnant and evil. Both men that were responsible are now dead. One by lethal injection, the other took a plea deal and got 20 years in prison. Upon release from prison, he continued to get in trouble with the law until one day he slipped and fell in his bathtub, hit his head, and died.
And this is a well. You can come out here if you want to. You don't stop it. People can come out here at their own boat. But anyways, this is a well. There's still water in there. That well goes down about 30 feet. It doesn't look very big around, but if you walk up to it and look down, it's very wide in diameter, and it's about 30 feet down. state got wind of that and they came and moved it, but then they left the hole exposed. So that hole is over 300 feet down. But the miners would go down there. Once they got down to the bottom, there's a tunnel that goes out a couple miles back into the mountains back there. You see the tracks right here? This is where the train would come up and get all the minerals. They would load up from over here. They would put all the minerals in the carts, just like in Snow White. You know, they have the little trains coming up.
Yeah.
But yeah, they would load them up and then they would send them back down there. But the tracks still exist. There's about 6 different mines up here. Tiffany's, the jewelry company, used to own one of the mines up here. This is where they used to get their turquoise. Oh, if you see
Wow.
turquoise, it's more of a greenish tint. This is probably where they got it from. That's why they like it. Because if you get turquoise from Bisbee, it's going to be more of a bluish tint. Yep. So this is where they used to get it because it had more of a greenish tint. But Tiffany's used to own this mine right here.
Wow. Not anymore, huh?
Not anymore. And the only reason these really closed down is because Bisbee opened up over there. So a lot of workers got more pay over there. So they all moved over there and then they kind of became abandoned. But there's still minerals. There's still copper and turquoise in the mountains. Is completely exposed. If you walk around, it just goes straight down. There's a big hole right there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So even though ground looks solid, it's a mining area, so you never know.
You never
what
know.
area- Yep. Walls are made of adobe. That's why it's so long. And adobe is made from blood. So a lot of the slaughtered cows, they would use the blood because blood coagulates and thickens it up like cement. So it's made of straw, mud, dirt, and blood. And that's what's holding it up still. And the burn pit is right back there. You see that little circular pit?
Yeah.
That's the burn pit. So that the building extended just a little bit more and then the chute went straight into the pit right there.
In 1906, John Gleason sold the Copper Bell mine to the Shannon Mining Company. By 1913, the Shannon Company was making a good profit on its operations and opened a hospital for its workers and their families. Alternately known as the Shannon Hospital or just the Gleason Hospital, it was the only medical facility from Douglas to the south, Wilcox to the northeast, and Tombstone to the west. It treated not only mining injuries but also the ailments of miners, ranchers, and their families. During the Spanish flu pandemic from 1918 to 1920, the Shannon Hospital was host to some who died, but also many who recovered as influenza raged through the area. The hospital had its own burn pit and was fully electrified. The hospital was in use only until the late 1930s when the post office closed and most of Gleason's residents moved away. Amputated body parts ended up here in this burn pit where they were destroyed to keep them from animals and also to help prevent spread of disease.
My grandfather had the store right there, and it was a bar, so a lot of people would get drunk. You still see the cables, so they would come over here and tie them up to the chains or to the cables when they were a little too tipsy, and they would leave them here overnight, and then in the morning they would come and let them sober up a little bit and then set them free. And then there were also 3 documented hangings on this tree. You can see how strong it is, how thick it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of them were cattle rustlers, but this is where they would hang them. There were at least 3 known from this tree. And then this house, after the town was vacated, this old couple just came out here and were living out here. The old lady died. He didn't know what to do with her. He didn't have any money, so he buried her underneath the house. And then he built the
intrigued to take a closer look. The Gleason School opened in 1918 and was a massive two-story building with an arched entryway. The bottom floor contained storerooms while the top floor had classrooms. There were as many as 4 teachers and scores of students, although the numbers varied greatly depending on the year. The last classes were held in 1945, and parts were removed for construction and renovation elsewhere. The wooden floors, for instance, were torn out and used to renovate Tombstone's Crystal Palace.
So we were down in the back corner back there, and they kept feeling, something's around, and he's like, I feel it, but I can't see anything. So he was panning this way, and then he got to the edge, and so he comes back around this way, and then in the last archway right there was just a little boy, just 9-10 years old, just standing there watching us.
And what's your name again?
It's Renee.
Renee, I'm Dave.
I'm Jennifer.
Nice to meet you.
Guys over there.
Thank you for the awesome tour. We had one last stop to make before our tour of Gleason was complete, and that was at the old Gleason Cemetery. Even though there is a sign marking it private property, we were told it was fine for us to film there, as long as we closed the gate behind us. I entered the graveyard and started filming this sign. Listen closely to what happens here. You're going to hear the click of my gimbal. That's where I stopped recording. Just before that, I captured a very strange sound. I'll play it a couple times so you can hear it. It was not something that we heard at time of recording. This graveyard had an eerie tranquility to it. While some of the graves were so old you couldn't read them, others were fairly newer. Here we see the grave sites of 2 infants who died in the early 40s. Some of the graves are surrounded by fences, and one local resident recalls his grandfather's story about stumbling out of the Bono saloon in its heyday, blind drunk, and deciding to sleep it off after securing his horse for the night in a little corral, only to find in horror that the next morning he had pinned the animal inside one of the fence plots in the cemetery. All right, guys, well, that's going to wrap it up for our look at the Gleason Ghost Town, a very historical place. kind of a creepy place. And we are really glad that you came along with us. So if you enjoyed the video and you want to support what we do, the easiest way to do that is hit the like button, hit subscribe. So until next time, from the Gleason Graveyard here in the Gleason Ghost Town, Arizona, we'll see you down the road.